How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we are going to do something really fun that was inspired by Randy over at Georgia Adventurer. We are going to do my knife story today. He did one of these in his car, he just uploaded it, and it was really interesting to listen to. I don't think he even meant to do like his own knife story. He was just talking about the knife community and stuff, but he was talking a lot about his journey with knives and how he got into them and stuff. And I've done this briefly in the past, but we have so many new subscribers, I figured I would do a knife story video as well and tell you guys how I got into knives, where I used to be, where I am now. I think it's really interesting to get to know each other on a personal level. So I have a couple of knives here to talk about. And we're just gonna go over the timeline of how I got into knives and, yeah, just kind of get to know each other. And I would love if you guys made response videos as well, or dropped your story down in the comments. Doesn't matter which one you do, but it'd be cool to see your face and to listen to your story. But if you're not comfortable with that, or if you don't have a channel, maybe just put it down in the comments. I think those are fun to read. But yeah, so my story started really early. My dad worked at Chicago Cutlery, actually, and you guys may know that company. It's a knife company that does kitchen cutlery. So my father worked there for a while, and he made knives at Chicago Cutlery, and I don't know how long he was there or when he left. I don't really recall, but, he ended up leaving and doing other jobs and stuff, but when I was a kid, he always had a knife on him. And he had one that looked very, very similar to a Buck 112, but way thinner. And I also can't recall if he made this knife that he carried all the time or if someone made it for him at Chicago Cutlery, but either way, it was like a very thin lockback knife like this, and it looked just like the Buck 112, but just like a way thinner profile and not nearly as bulky. So it was probably as thin as this, lockback. The blade was a little more of a clip point blade. It was not as high as this one, but it was basically something like this. And he carried it every single day of my childhood. Like, you would not catch that man without his lockback pocket knife, and he would just drop it right down in his pocket with a Maglite, the little pocket one, the skinny one, and he always had like a hank in his back pocket, a red hank, and like some change in his watch pocket, and that was really it, and like his keys. But that was all he carried, but he did always have that knife on him. I remember it, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I've always been a tomboy ever since I can remember. I mean, I'm talking like four or 5 years old. Like, I was just born to like get down and dirty. I just loved being outside. I loved working. I loved being outdoors and playing in the woods. And I distinctly remember when I was younger with my siblings, like I remember wanting to be outside just all day. I just wanted to be in the woods doing play pretend all day and whittling sticks into swords and, playing army and all of these games. And my father always taught my siblings and I to, be productive members of the family and of society, which included carrying things that can help not only you, but other people. That involves a knife. So I think I got my first little Swiss Army knife when I was like 6 or 7. I think it was like 6 probably. And my father gave me permission to get a little Swiss Army knife. And I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me. And I just remember always carrying this little cheapo Swiss Army knife. It wasn't a real one. It wasn't like a Victorinox. It was like just a cheapo one from the store downtown. And we would carry those things everywhere, man. We would get up in the morning and hop on our bikes and be gone the entire day out in the woods, whittling stuff and using the little saw and using the little tweezers and everything. And I got so into it. Man, my father and I would watch Chicago Cutlery, or not Chicago Cutlery, Frost Cutlery, like Cutlery Corner or something on TV at night. It was like a 3-hour long show where they were selling cheapo, Pakistani and Chinese knives, the Frost Cutlery brand. And I could watch that for hours. It was kind of like the only thing my father and I bonded over, because he was very emotionally void, very, very, very physically abusive, just very harsh and brash. But the only time that we bonded was when I showed interest in things that he thought were productive, like knives. So I started collecting knives literally when I was like 7. Like, I started making an allowance and using it to buy knives off of that channel, off of the Cutlery Corner channel. My father would like let me pick some out on the TV and the deals and stuff, and he would call them in and buy them if I had the money for it, if I had earned the money for it. And I'm not kidding, I had a full-blown collection of Bowies and Skinners and all types of knives. I had a whole collection of probably 40 knives by the time I was 7. I'm not even kidding. I was invested. And then he taught me how to sharpen on an old Arkansas stone. I used to use my Frost Cutlery knives and practice on an Arkansas stone. And, my father taught me you have a Norton stone with 2 sides to it, a coarse grit and a fine grit. And that's it. And you spit on it and you sharpen your knife, and that's it. Those were the days, simple, pretty effective. So I learned how to freehand sharpen when I would say I was probably 9 when he started to teach me how to freehand sharpen. He taught me how to use a honing rod when I was probably 7. But yeah, I have been using knives my entire life. I have always had them. I've always had a collection, and I was collecting all of the Frost Cutlery ones for quite some time, but when I turned 9 for Christmas, I got that little Victorinox Classic SD. I actually have it in my pocket right now. I show it all the time on the channel because I've had it since I was 9. But for Christmas, my mother, because I was so into knives, I had been begging for a real Swiss Army knife. I wanted the real Victorinox, and for my Christmas gift when I was 9, she got me this, and she also got me a Gerber Ridge. It was this little keychain pocket knife, and it almost looked like a little razor blade. And then she also got me a Buck Stockman, a medium Stockman, all for Christmas with this. And so this exact one I have had, why aren't you focusing? Since I was 9 years old, and I have carried it every single day. It still has a toothpick and tweezers, still has everything working. Unbelievable. But when I had found out about real knives, that's when it really started to, the bug started to hit me. That Gerber knife really got me into things. The Buck really got me into things. This little Swiss Army knife did. And I started researching, like, better brands. Now, back then, so I'm 27. Back then, when I was 9, Gerber and Buck were dominating the game because they hadn't moved overseas yet. Gerber had not sold out to Fiskars yet. Buck hadn't been making stuff overseas yet. So, or at least none of the stuff that anybody knew about was made overseas. It was still all made in the US. So I started researching those brands, and I wanted, like, the real deal, right? I really wanted to get rid of all of the Frost Cutlery stuff, and I wanted the real stuff. So then I started getting into Kershaw's, and I collected more Buck knives. I had so many Buck knives, and I started getting into those, and more Swiss Army knives. And that followed through until I was probably 16, and I used my knives like crazy. We were still out in the woods, making little campfires, fishing a ton. I was so obsessed with fishing, guys. Like, I have caught some of the biggest bass in New Hampshire, and sometime I'm going to have to show you guys photos. I was so obsessed with fishing. I could go anywhere and catch the biggest bass. I'm talking 8, 10 pounders. I was obsessed, and I used my knives for fishing all the time. Hunting, we had little BB guns. we just were outside all the time and using tools and using our shit. So, you know, I had some Kershaws. I had a collection of about 100 knives by the time I was 16, and it was mostly Kershaw and Buck and what were some other ones? More Swiss Army knives, just stuff like that. But then one day when I was doing my research and everything, I forget how I stumbled upon Benchmade. But at some point when I was 16, I stumbled upon Benchmade, and then yet again we went through another culling of the collection. So now I needed a Benchmade, and I wanted the really good stuff. And I started working the moment you were able to start working here in New Hampshire for an actual wage, I started working. And I worked my whole childhood, like doing odd jobs for people. I remember when I was real young, probably 7, I was working at a place called Empire Pets, and I was cleaning hamster cages and gerbil cages for money. We were just always trying to make money, man. From the time I was real young, we were always trying to find ways to make a couple bucks to get our little knives and stuff like that. But so I had a job when I was 16, and I started getting in. I wanted to get into even better knives, and the first Benchmade I ever got was a Benchmade Sequel 707 that I still have. And Nicole actually got it for me for my birthday. She knew I wanted it so bad, and back then, you know, a $100 knife was very expensive for me. And she got it for me for my birthday, and I literally opened it and I cried. I remember the day. I remember where I was, and I remember the feeling. We were outside. I was living at a coworker's house. I must have gotten it when I was 17 then, because I was living with other people when I was 17. So I must have gotten it when I was 17, I think. I don't know. Either way, I was at a coworker's house outside, and I opened up the box, and I saw the little blue box, and I knew it was a Benchmade, and I bawled my eyes out because I knew she got me the sequel. And that thing was my baby. Like I said, I still have it. And just the perfection of that knife. The centering, the action, the quality of materials, the aluminum, the G10 inlays, everything about it. It's raining. I don't know if you guys can hear that. We just had a storm roll in. Everything about that knife, man, I just fell in love, and it started a whole new level to this addiction that I didn't even know I could reach. So now I wanted to get rid of all my other stuff, and I wanted to start with the Benchmades, and then I found out about Spyderco. So I ended up taking that whole collection that I had of the Kershaws and the Bucks and stuff. They were nice knives, but I just didn't want them anymore. I took the whole collection. I went to, I think it was either Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's, or no, it was Kittery. It was Kittery Trading Post up in Maine. It was Kittery Trading Post. I took the whole collection up to Maine. I put it on the counter. I said, "How much can you give me for this whole collection?" And they gave me a couple $100 for the entire thing. They thought it was cool that I was so invested in the knives. So I sold my whole collection. I bought a Benchmade Mini Griptilian in 20 CV with gray G10 scales and blue liners, and then I wanted a 940, so I saved up for that, and I still have that one to this day. I got this when I was like 18 maybe, I don't know, but I got this 940 because I had seen it on Wrangler Star's videos. Back then, Wrangler Star he was just making so much content on the 940 and talking about the fizz, and I was, about 18 years old, and I wanted the fizz too, so I busted my butt, and I bought a 940 with my own money, and this is the one that I bought, about 10 years ago. Still just as good as the day I got it. Centering is perfect on it. Just a beater of a knife. So I picked this up because Wrangler Star had sold it to me, but then he switched over to the Para 3, and then I needed that. So then I started getting into the whole Benchmade Spyderco deal, and I just went balls to the wall with that. And then you get down that rabbit hole, and you're watching Blade HQ, and you're watching Ben Peterson, and you're watching Cody from Wrangler Star, and, you know, just watching all these people with these cool Spydercos and Benchmades. So I had to get the bug out, and I had to get all the mini grips and all that stuff. And I can't recall how I got sucked into the Instagram thing. I had a personal Instagram, and I think I had posted a picture of like one of my new Swiss Army knives or something, and a guy overseas in the Netherlands, Dutch knife guy who I am still in contact with, he somehow found my post on my personal page that had like 400 followers, and I knew them all in person because it was a personal page. He somehow found this post, maybe from my hashtags, and he was like, "Hey, I have no idea who you are or anything, but you look like you have a real knack for photography and that you're into knives." And he was like, "I don't know if you are aware, but there's a whole EDC community of people that take pictures of their knives and make videos on their knives, and you can join it if you want. Like, it's open to anybody. You just use such and such hashtag and your photos will pop up to these people and you all start following each other." And I was like, wait, what? Like, there's a whole hidden world of people like me? Because, you know, by this time now we're talking, I'm 20 or I'm 21 or something by this time now, right? So I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, I can't believe there's a community of people like me. So I typed in the hashtags he was talking about and stuff, and sure enough, millions of people millions of people on Instagram are photographing their Swiss Army knives and their pocket knives and their multi-tools and talking about them. And I was like, I was born into this without even knowing. I gotta become part of this. So I ended up making a separate account for pictures of my knives, and it just took off. I mean, I was posting every day. I was using all the hashtags. I was taking pictures of my knife collection. And I want to say I think it only took me 3 years to get to about 10,000 followers. It was a very short period of time. But I was taking pictures of everything, and I started talking to, you know, Benchmade, and I started talking to Emerson. You know, I was taking pictures of their Emersons, and they were, you know, reposting them, and I started talking with them and stuff. And after a couple years, you know, I got to 9.9 thousand followers on my Instagram for my photos, and I was really invested in the Instagram thing. I was taking photos of all types of knives for all types of people. People were sending me stuff. Companies were sending me stuff. I just went nutty with it. I went absolutely nutty. And at one point, I decided I was only going to make content and do photos of knives that were predominantly made here in the States, maybe Taiwan. Germany's fine, Italy's fine, but I wasn't going to do some of the overseas stuff. And that actually helped me gain more traction because people appreciated the patriotic effort I was putting in. And I picked up my first Chris Reeve as well. I ended up picking up a 21 off of eBay for $325 shipped. This exact 21. And I started posting this, and I started testing it, which was like unheard of back then because nobody wanted to use their Sebenzas really other than Randy Johnson. So I, was taking videos and pictures of this thing just being put through the ringer. It's got so many snail trails, and then that gained more traction. And I, through getting this and using it, I stumbled upon Alchemy One, Clint. He has a YouTube channel that he's not really active on anymore, and he has an Instagram page. And he has an Insingo 21, and he kept saying this use your shit thing, right? He kept saying use your shit, and like use your knives, and learn how to sharpen them, and all this stuff, right? And I was like, man, that's so cool. Like, he has the same knife as me, and he uses it, and he talks about using Stryders and using Emersons, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, that he had these like Grail knives that I hadn't seen people use before, and he was using them, and he was talking about actually using them, and So he had said one time, use your shit. And it just kind of like clicked with me, right? Because I was really into the using your knife thing at this point. And by now, in my mid-20s, I was doing some blue-collar jobs. And I was doing some maintenance mechanic stuff, some construction stuff, some landscaping stuff. I was kind of all over the place. I was doing childcare too, but on the side, and just in my spare time, I was doing a lot of like blue-collar stuff. And he had said that use your shit thing, and I was like, I like that. I like that mentality. I feel like that's me. Like, you have tools and you just use them, and that's what they're made for. They're not made for staring at. They're not pocket jewelry. These are made to actually use. Because in my mind, it's like, why would you spend $325 on something you're not going to actually use? Like, why have $325 sitting there to stare at when you could just have $325 in cash? If I'm going to spend that money on something, I'm going to use it. So I kind of picked up that use your shit thing, and I started using that hashtag that Clint had created. And then everything just took off, right? That just started a whole shit show between people that absolutely adored the theory and then some people who just couldn't stand it. And one day someone had mentioned in an Instagram message, they were like, you should really think about making a YouTube channel, because I was recording cutting tasks and stuff with my knives, and someone had been like, you really are good at this. Like, you've got some potential here. You should probably get on YouTube, make content. And they were like, you've got 9.9 thousand followers on your Instagram. Imagine how many of them are going to come over to YouTube and follow you there. And I was rolling the idea around in my head for a while, and then finally, two years ago, exactly, 2 years ago in April, exactly, I ended up making a YouTube channel, and I kind of started with this whole use your shit mentality on YouTube of like, we're gonna use some knives, and we're gonna record how they work and how they perform and how the different steels work, and try to do some myth busting on lock failures and rumors about knives that we hear about, and testing brands that some people love and some people hate. And so we started the YouTube channel two years ago, and that also just went off. It just went off. And when I had first started the YouTube channel, if you think I'm obnoxious now, you gotta go watch my old stuff. I haven't deleted any of it. It hurts my eyes and my ears to watch the content that I used to make. I was so obnoxious. But that was my persona back then. That it was like this rugged, I don't give a crap what you think. I'm gonna just use my tools. Like, go cry yourself to sleep if you don't like it. We're using American-made stuff. We're using our tools, and this is how I was raised, and I know how to maintain my knives, and you don't, and we're just gonna use our shit, and if you don't like it, go find something else to do. So there was a lot of just harsh, cutthroat content back then, and I was doing the Instagram thing really hard, and I was just all over the YouTube thing, and using my knives as chisels. If you go back on my Use Your Shit playlist, there are videos of me using a Chris Reeve up on a ceiling and chiseling stuff with it, and taking this and using it with a hammer, and just all this crazy stuff that I was doing back then with these knives, and trying to break them and trying to fail them. And I got so invested in this ideology of me being this crackhead person that tries to break $500 knives. The 940, I broke the tip off of this on a video. I was prying brackets off of a ceiling, or not a ceiling, a window frame. I made a video where I was prying brackets with this, and I ended up breaking the tip off of it. But I got so invested in this I don't care about you mentality that I started to get I started to get a little overboard with it, I think. And I was too much. I was way too much. And I didn't notice for a while until people started pointing it out that it was just a little obnoxious. And I was really invested in the Instagram, and I was really invested in the YouTube, and I was really working my butt off at my day job to be able to afford knives like Chris Reeves, to be able to test on the channel. I was buying, the Sebenza 31 and using it as a pry bar, and just working really hard to afford to buy things to beat on, not to impress anyone, but to just have different content, I guess. And I think I just went a little too far with it. And eventually it just was driving me nuts. I was reading the comments and I was being super defensive with everyone. And then I realized, no, you know what? They might have a point. Like I'm annoying. I'm annoying other people and I'm annoying myself. And so eventually, I had to make some changes, and there was a small group of people on Instagram that ended up just really shredding me one day, for something very silly, and I just between not knowing where to go with my channel moving forward, because I didn't know how to create a new persona, right? But between having the confusion about YouTube and having the confusion about Instagram, I ended up just deleting the Instagram. I had almost 10,000 followers, a metric F-ton of connections with very important people and very large companies, and I really had a good thing going, and I was immature, and I just deleted the whole page. I just deleted it. I didn't even deactivate it. I just deleted it. I was just like, bye. I sold off my whole folding knife collection, basically. Sold it all off, and as soon as I made sure that everyone got their packages on Instagram, I just deleted the whole freaking thing. And it was just YouTube. And I kind of made a new mission for myself. I was like, okay, you got a couple of knives here to make content on, so you're going to have to use your personality instead of the knives now to continue this, basically, right? I had like a pep talk with myself. I was like, okay, you only got 6 folding knives. You can only do so much content with that until you can get some other stuff in at some point. So I was like, you gotta change something, otherwise people are not gonna watch this. They're gonna get bored or irritated. So I ended up just changing the way I went about the channel, and I just toned it down a little bit. And I had some realizations, and I cut my dreadlocks off on camera on the channel. That video's up there. I used a Delica and Crewwear, I think, and I cut off my 3-foot-long dreadlocks on camera, and just decided from there on out I was gonna try to just be a little more mature and a little more relatable, and I didn't have to have this hard exterior shell on anymore. And the biggest realization was that I was becoming my father, which was my worst nightmare. This whole passion was created by him, and it was the only way I could connect with him, because he, quite frankly, was horrible to us. And the only way I could feel like I had a connection with him, even though we weren't talking, was this knife thing. But through the knife community, and through being a female in the knife community, I built up this hard shell of an exterior over time to protect myself, and I ended up becoming exactly what my father was, which was a prick. An unrelatable, forward, emotionless, violent prick. And it just dawned on me. I was like, holy crap, the last person I would ever want to become on this earth, I have become through a passion that was his and that is now mine. Weird that the storm stopped when I started talking about this, right? Everything just kind of calmed down and the sun's out now. That's kind of weird. So I had this big realization, like, holy crap, like, this is a passion of mine. It really is. But I do not want to be passionate about it in with my father's personality or charisma, because the last thing I ever want to do is be like him. So I just changed a lot of things on the channel, and my life changed. I ended up losing my housing, and just, sorry about the phone, everything just kind of put a halt to this, like, big bad Erica thing. And so I changed the content on the channel, and I slowly kind of drifted away from the hardcore use your shit deal. I changed jobs. I got out of blue collar work, which I had been in for years. You know, I was doing construction and landscaping and warehouse work, and I worked on a farm for a while, and I ended up leaving that blue collar field and getting into something more passionate and gentle, you know, working with veterans and service dogs, and it just chilled that part of me out that was so on the defense all the time and so harsh and so angry. And so I calmed down, and the content kind of changed, and I still use my tools and I still use my knives. Absolutely. No matter what they are, even if they're a Sebenza, I'm still using it. Even if it's an Emerson Mini A100, which is very hard to obtain for a lot of people, I'm still using them. Still sharpening my knives, still honing in my skills, but I don't have to be trying to impress anyone anymore. I'm not trying to do anything cuckoo, and I ended up making a new Instagram page and starting over because I'm really passionate about this, but this time I wanted to take a more gentle approach and not be so on edge all the time, not so defensive. So I made a new Instagram page, and a lot of old followers started following again, and the channel has just kind of taken off here, and we're at, I don't know how many subs. Last time I checked, it was, 7,000, and we've had the channel for only 2 years. So that's good. In my opinion, 7,000 people subscribe to my channel when I've only had it for 2 years. Not bad. But, yeah, I kind of just changed my role a little bit, slowed my roll, and we're still using knives all day, every day, but just in a different manner than we were. We're not using them as pry bars and screwdrivers anymore. So I started getting into kind of the traditional knives again, the simple knives, the stuff that I grew up with. Carbon steels, simple, easy, pocketable knives. I started getting into these again. They're cheap, they're effective, and I enjoy them. And that's kind of where we are now, is kind of, we've come full circle. I'm carrying the stuff that I grew up with, that my father carried. It's a gentle reminder that I don't have to run from the past. I can enjoy it and embrace the good parts, I guess. We're getting a little deep here. Yeah. I'm trying to just learn how to cope. And I think this is my way of doing it, We're back to old school, traditional knives. We have slowed down. This is very reminiscent of the stuff that my father used to use. I don't really have contact with him. I haven't in a very, very, very long time. We have no relationship. And that used to frustrate me, and I wanted to be in the knife community but be different than him, and now I'm just trying to learn to appreciate the good times and the good stuff that he influenced me with, and I'm just trying to embrace that. So we're back to traditional stuff. We're back to the stuff that I grew up with: case knives, carbon steels, leather slips. That's what I grew up with. That's what got me into this. We don't need anything fancy. We don't need anything that's $500. This works. So now we're here. And I'm 27 years old. I'm going to be 28 in August. And I've kind of come full circle with this, and we're back to exactly what I grew up with. Still using our shit, but just, we don't have to be so hardcore and extreme all the time, I guess. And that's where we are now. And the channel's doing fantastic. I have stuff coming in from people all the time. Still not using anything from overseas. I haven't sold out to anybody, don't worry. I never will. I love my American-made products. I love supporting American companies. That's not going to change. But yeah, we've kind of come full circle, and now here we are, back to square one with old school knives that I just adore and I think are fantastic, and I love the patina and I love the character. And here we are. So, moving forward, definitely going to have a lot of traditional knives on the channel. We're still going to use production folders as well, but I love me a good little slippy. I love leather work. I love supporting my brothers that do leather work. I love supporting my friends. And that's where we are now. Equally as passionate, but we've calmed down and we've realized a lot of stuff. So, that's my knife story. We are almost 28. We're at 7,000 subs. We got, a lot of Instagram followers. And we're just enjoying the little things in life. So guys, that's all I have for you. That's my story. Let me know what yours is, either down in the comments or on a video response. I want to hear Michael over at Richter Knives talk about this. Randy, I'd love to hear more about your story. Georgia Adventure, I'd love to hear you talk about this. Let me know you guys' stories. I think it just brings us all closer together, and I think they're really interesting. So, I will see you guys on the next video. Go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I will see you guys so soon. Thanks for supporting the channel. I love you guys. See you later.